What's happening out there? What's happening out there? Welcome to another week of Candle and Knowledge. This is Candle and Knowledge Redux. I am your host, Jarvis Smith. I haven't done it this way in a long time, like most of the radio show. Candle and Knowledge for people who are new. This is about the life and lessons my parents taught me in the wake of the deaths and how I'm using it in my everyday life to guide me through my future, my present, and everything else I can learn in between. And yeah, I had to think about, man, just this journey for me. And again, this is like an anthology here for me, just kind of going back on certain moments in my timeline, talking about Candle Knowledge. And one thing I wanted to revisit and bring right here to the video series, to this video journal, video podcast series here is talk about why did I stop rapping? As I mentioned before, this year in 2025 is about, Candle Knowledge being around and being in my life for quite some time now, since 2017 when I started the series. But also, I have been recording audio and doing things with audio in that world for 25 years, since the year 2000. My whole entire journey started out making music. So with this 25-year anniversary, I definitely want to continue to shed light on these different moments of my time with microphones and being in front of an audience and performing and stuff like that, and just my background with that. And one of the things I think would be great to talk about is when my transition happened, when I started to see my evolution of just moving on from wanting to create music and moving on from wanting to be the performer, the rapper that I thought I was going to be, because that was a big part of my life in my earlier stages of my years, right? So, I think it all started, for a little bit more context again. I started making music in the year 2000 with my homie Q. That was just the background. It started out with me just writing out random lyrics to just like other people's instrumentals, and then wanted to record that on a boombox speaker. Then I got that boombox speaker for my birthday, and I started recording some stuff. Then Q came along. We started making some tapes, literally cassette tapes, then making our own CDs, and we started making our own beats and start releasing our own CDs, and obviously start putting stuff up on streaming platforms, as far as like the streaming platforms of the time being like, Pure Volume, even though it wasn't the biggest for hip hop, but Pure Volume was one, MP3 Unsigned, SoundClick. These were the streaming platforms that I was using at the time before, Apple Music, Spotify, and even YouTube. These were the ones I was going to at the time and stuff like that. So you kind of move on from that. And then I started releasing a little bit more music afterwards. But throughout that time, that was just my process of being creative. I really identified the most with being the MC, being up on the microphone, being in front of an audience, rapping, getting the studio gear, trying to move forward in that direction. I thought that was going to be my path overall. And so I would say throughout that timeline of 2000 to roughly 2014, that's when I stopped rapping, was in 2014 officially. I was, creating music, doing my thing. And I would say around that college area for me, around that college era for me, is when that thing started to transition a little bit more. When I got to a school like Columbia College Chicago is where I went to for my undergrad, and just seeing all the different creatives that were out there, it was really inspiring to see that. But also, it was like, okay, there's a lot more people out here doing a lot more things that I never even thought about doing, and everyone has their own ambitions. Of course, being a rapper was definitely a thing. So as I was navigating through the city of Chicago, doing my own creative thing with the collective I had started, I was seeing what other people were doing as well. And this is like when, names like Chance the Rapper and Vic Mensa and Kids These Days and Save Money and all these different movements were happening in Chicago around this time too, that I was kind of going to school. I'm making it clear I was not involved in that stuff or anything like that, but I was just hearing about that because I was going to school at Columbia College Chicago. So a lot of these guys, those people I just named, were like passing out their music or performing at venues and clubs and stuff like that in the area that I was going to school at. So I was seeing all these different flyers and posters or people talking about shows they went to or whatever, or mixtapes they're listening to or whatever from these artists like that. And, as we were doing all this stuff, I had started my own collective as well. And I'm up here trying to figure out how to navigate through the Chicago scene with some of my homies and stuff like that. And, that was exciting, challenging, but exciting at the same time. I'm still living in the suburbs of Chicago in Palos Hills. So I wasn't fully integrated in the day to day. So that was one thing. But as I was just seeing how things were happening out there, I was still curious about what was going on and how to get my footing going and stuff like that. I definitely had some cool collaborations, some cool moments. One of these great people that I got a chance to work with, his name is Ichi. We call him Ichiro. He was amazing videographer, cinematographer, photographer, overall just a visual artist, a director. Definitely a person who inspired me greatly to step into this visual format over the years. and just working with him, learning from him, and being able to do some cool video projects with him. We did like a music session called Demo, which was really dope. Collecting all of our stories collectively. It's somewhere out here. I should link it. I'll link it to this episode. Just the earlier rapping days of Demo, and then we did like some small events throughout Chicago for sure. Some events were attended, some events were not heavily attended. We were learning, putting our money up, and just getting out there and really getting it, and that was really exciting. But at this time around my college era, I was really just learning about like, okay, I just noticed that music was evolving and changing. There was a shift that was coming. This is also the same time that like, the drill sound of music was coming through Chicago. A lot of these different drill artists that I wasn't familiar with at first was coming through Chicago as well. As I was entering my senior year, my final year, and these different drill artists were happening, I said, okay, that's really cool. That's dope. Some of these artists that were coming through that I was like, okay, their sound is different. Some of the songs that they did have were dope that I was catching on to. Some of them I just couldn't catch on the wave at that time. And it was interesting to see. But as the sound of music was changing a little bit too towards that scene, that genre, that movement at the time, my interest in music was just also evolving at the same time. And I think it was around my senior year when I was getting ready to go out for graduation in May. There was this capstone, event they called Manifest at Columbia College Chicago. It's kind of like the end of the year festival where all the different graduating students can kind of highlight different things they worked on. If they get selected to highlight something, they can submit some stuff and then they can get it selected and get it highlighted if their submission gets rewarded with being recognized for this festivities and stuff like that. So there's all these different cool things that were happening around the campus at that time, and I was fortunate enough I got to perform on a stage that wasn't even the official Manifest stage. It was like some other type of like smaller stage that some other organization put together, but they got me booked on it. So I thought it was cool. It was dope. They booked the whole entire, collaboration that I had did with my boy Q and some other artists I was working with at that time. And we kind of did that. And that was really exciting to have that moment. But as I was having that moment at the same time, I was like, okay, cool. You get to perform in the city of Chicago, right? And that was just like a simple goal of mine. So it'd be really cool to perform outdoors on a stage in Chicago. That was simply just my goal. So I said, okay, cool. If I get to do that, I feel satisfied. So I did get to do that towards the end of my college years. And that was I had to do some songs that I was really working on that I thought were some of my better records that I was doing at that time and stuff like that. So I said, this was really cool. This is exciting. But after college and things like that, and you start to navigate life and what you're up to next, I was still creating, still writing music and stuff like that. But just my shift started to change a little bit as I was working on like some visual projects I was trying to do and just do some other type of storytelling ideas that I had that had nothing to really do with music, even though it pulled from elements of music where it'd be like oral storytelling or visual storytelling with some type of oral component to it, right? Me speaking over it, something like that. So I was working on all these different ideas at that time and really just thinking about what can I do that's a little bit different. But throughout that time, I just started to think, like, okay, well, as your interests are changing, your mindset is just shifting a little bit. You still have something you want to say here creatively. So as I was doing my rapping projects that I did like a couple small projects with my homie Sane. We did like a special project, rapper and poet, which was really dope. We put that together, and we told that, had that experience that was really dope. Just these two mini series projects that we did that was really cool idea that we had put out there, and through like SoundCloud and all that stuff like that. That was really dope. And at that moment, around that time afterwards, in that 2013, by that 2014 period, I was just like, you know what? I feel like this is the time for me to transition on. There was a project that I was working on that was a video project that I said, okay, after I do this and kind of tell this maybe story of a collective that I was working on, and I didn't know too much about editing, but I was piecing it together as best as I could. And I said, okay, I think that this is like the period at the end of the sentence for me because, I started to see other things take place. My interests started to evolve. I was really starting to get more involved into visual storytelling and editing and combining these two components together and just finding out other ways to kind of tell stories and experiences and share my art and my voice without always having to be the rapper, being the performer. When I was at the same time doing this around this time, I was also involved in working concerts and music festivals for freelance at the time. So I was getting exposed to the entertainment industry, which eventually will lead me to my full-time career working in live entertainment that I have now. But at that time, I was just getting involved in that. And I was seeing the other side of the entertainment business too. I was seeing like, oh, you don't have to just be this performer. You don't have to just be, on the stage. There's so many positions behind the scene as well. And there's so many opportunities. So once I start to see that world and then my interests are already changing to other types of creative expression with my art, I said, I think this is a period at the end of the sentence. This is the thing that I need to do to evolve and go on to the next stage overall. And I think that's what I started to work on next. And I started to think about what that transition looks like for me overall. At that time, when I started to have that change, and I said, okay, this is the period at the end of the sentence for me being a performer, me being a rapper, I was also like, okay, so this is it. I'm not going to release any music. And this happened January 1st, 2014. And I remember I had put up like a small cryptic. This is when you post up those cryptic, Facebook posts sometimes. I just post up a small cryptic, a little teaser that was just simply that said, never forget, never forget, never forget. And I had all these different highlights of my different career journey in there. When I said that, never forget, like 5 different times. It was like a 14-second thing. And then at the end of it, it just said simply JRS. And that was me saying, goodbye to that timeline and just me stepping into just me being me, myself, Jarvis Rashard Smith. And that was just everything for me to kind of walk into. And that was something I was thinking about overall. And when I had that transition happen, I felt a sense of relief. I didn't feel a sense of, disappointment or failure, but a sense of relief. And that relief came from just not from like, I don't know, not for something negative, but it came for something positive. Like, okay, now this is done. Now what's next? And I know some people might have a different POV. It's like, man, you spent 14 years rapping, recording, releasing music, and now it's just over with. You didn't get rich. You didn't become famous. You didn't go on tour. You didn't get no features for no major rappers. You didn't get your head name, whatever, on the headlines of a marquee and all this other stuff like that. No, I didn't, but I still felt very successful because of what I learned about a lot of things in life in general. It's about that journey. And I decided to take that journey from 2000 to 2014 to express myself creatively. And that creative expression, that journey of that really led me to so many different places to become the person that I am today. That voice, that hip hop and music creation and writing lyrics, recording myself, going through that creative process has enabled me to create and see things from a different perspective. So when I see real life obstacles or challenges come my way, I have a different perspective on addressing them and handling them and moving forward for them. But that all came from the expression of creating music for those 14 years. So it definitely played off. So it definitely paid off in a major way down the line for me. But it just, because it didn't result into riches or to adulation or to acclaim or something like that, doesn't mean that it was a waste of time. And sometimes with your ambitions and goals, things are going to change. Life events can make things change. Living conditions can make things change. Health conditions can make things change. But even just mindset, emotions, and your spirituality or whatever you believe in, right, can have things change. And for me, that's what it was. It was a sense of relief because it's like, okay, that period of that my time is done. But now it's a new period, right? You're stepping into yourself. JRS, just you being you and expressing your story and telling the story, which I now call the story of us, which is just basically the journey of myself and the people that I came up with and highlighting these stories in formats like this. That's what this has all been about. And another big thing that I had to realize when I was letting things go is that just because, and I used to think like this, I used to think that the only people that were allowed to say something profound or to share their experiences in life in a setting or something like that, or just to speak publicly, externally, right, to an audience, were people who were rich, famous, who had millions of albums sold, who won 50 million different awards, who had magazine covers after magazine covers and billboards after billboards. And I used to think that people who weren't like that, they weren't allowed to say nothing. No, you're not allowed to say anything because, you're not rich, you're not famous, you don't have this, you don't have that. You can't say anything. You're not allowed to speak. You can talk amongst your people in your community, in your household, your friend group or whatever, but you're not allowed to grab one of these and to speak to an audience. You're not allowed to do that. And that's when I started to notice things were changing. I said, you're wrong, big time. This is when the introduction, I started to see YouTube. YouTube was around, but like YouTube started to, you start seeing more vlogs and more, I didn't understand the term at the time, content creators. come up around that timeline of 2014 that I was paying attention to and catching on to and all that stuff like that. Obviously, it was happening before, but it wasn't clicking to me. That's what was happening. I just thought people were just posting their videos. I didn't realize there were certain people who were very serious about the videos they were posting, and there was a little bit of strategy behind it. There was a little bit more thought behind it. They were releasing these videos no different than an artist will release an album or release a series of songs. They were putting these videos out there no different than what a director would do, putting together a film, short film, long film, or whatever, right? And then with that technology advancing and stuff like that happening, then more video platforms coming up, all these different voices start coming up. And for better or worse, which I know some people say there's too many damn people talking, which I can agree. I'm contributing to it too now. But, I still think that was a dope thing to see that. I still think that was a special thing to see more unique voices pop up and everyone had a different perspective. And now that it's not necessarily about, and again, I know this could be a controversial thing. It's not necessarily about who can sing like this or rap like this or dance like this or whatever. It's more about people's personalities and sharing that journey in their voice. Again, it can go both ways, but I did think that was exciting to see, like, okay, there's just a whole new wave of how people can express themselves and share their voices, their opinions, their views. And I thought that was very exciting. And I said, okay, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to keep my eye on this. And I paid attention to it and I kept my eye on it. And the one thing I took away from it was that my voice does matter and I can say something and it doesn't have to be in a rhyme for it to mean something. That my journey does mean something and I can put it in a way that is relatable, that it can connect with people, connect with the audience. Essentially, all this thought process led me to what I feel like is a life purpose project for me, which is Candle of Knowledge. Because Candle of Knowledge is about the goal of immortalizing the legacy of my parents, giving them that immortality. That's what the best thing I can do now with my audio experience that I have, 25 years in this, right? That's the best thing I can do with my voice that I feel very confident about, that I do love and care about so much. You goddamn right, like I said before, I love my voice. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But what I can do with these different things is just put it into this medium, put it into this field here and tell that story, tell that journey. And maybe somebody will connect with it, but maybe not. But you know what? It's a form of expression for me as I've been through the grieving process, as I'm understanding myself, as I'm evolving and growing. So damn it, if nobody else checks it out, at least I know this means something to me because I get a feeling in my heart, in my body, in my spirit when I do this every single time. That same feeling I got when I was writing lyrics and making music and recording and making beats and all this other stuff like that. That same feeling is done in this format too. So you haven't lost anything. That creative mindset, that artistic view of things is still here. And I love it. So when I truly understood that, I knew I was about to hit new heights. So therefore, that feeling that I had in 2014 of relief was a good thing because I knew that this was a moment that I can really transition to something completely different. And I can focus on telling different type of stories that allow me to empower a different type of future for myself that I didn't think was possible. So I don't think that getting involved in interests or hobbies or endeavors that necessarily don't pan out the way you think in the beginning is a waste of time. I think it's all about the things you learn about that process and even the connections you can make with people in that process and how you can evolve and grow and level up yourself. I am definitely a reflection of having a personal interest that nobody was motivating me to do, that nobody was inspiring me to do, even though my parents were encouraging, but no one motivated me or inspired me or necessarily told me, you got to do this. You got to sit down and write some raps today. You got to sit down. No, that was all me. That all came from me. But throughout that process and being a result of that, it helped me become the person that I am today, to shape my voice, to shape my mindset, to shape my whole entire style and my approach to so many different things. So when I'm faced with life obstacles and things that come into my way, and I have to have answers for questions that I do not have answers for in that immediate moment, I lean back into my creativity. I lean back into my journey. I lean back into all the different things that I learned along the way. Again, this is about building character. This is about building style. This is about building yourself into the person that you want to be. And if I'm proclaiming to be working on my magnum opus, which is me saying I'm about to become the greatest of all time, which is just me saying simply, I'm going to become the best version of myself, then I owe a lot of that to the creativity and the art, because that's the best thing that came out of this entire process, was me having a clear understanding of who I am. So when I get faced with life challenges like losing my parents, like certain opportunities not going my way, just generally having a bad day or whatever, I go back to the source that started it all. My voice, the art, the microphones, the music, the creativity. And I remind myself, ain't nothing changed.